Hi everybody, Miss Lorenz here. I'm going to talk about 1.3 multiplying fractions. This is the 6th grade math chunk, and this is a great starting problem here. The art teacher gave each student half a sheet of paper, and then she asked students to color 1/4 of their pieces, and you need to figure out what part of the original sheet she asked students to color. I am going to draw a picture because it's a little bit hard to see with this person cutting a paper in half, but what we have is she gave each student a half sheet of paper. And so we're going to focus on this half. And then she asked the students to color 1/4 of their piece. So she's asking students to color 1/4. See how I split that into fourths? Of that half of a piece. So she's asking students to color 1/4 of a half. And 1/4 of a half is how we would read 1/4 times a half, which would give us an 1/8. We can go back and see that that's going to be true because the question is, how much of the original did you color? And look, if I put in those dots, you can see that that coloring actually is an 1/8 of that whole piece. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the area model that I just used in the example previously to talk about this problem. There was 1/4 of the pan of lasagna left, and that's what we're looking at up here. And then Tom ate 1/3 of that amount. So he ate 1/3 of the 1/4. And you have to figure out what fraction of the whole pan Tom ended up eating. So this area model demonstrates that, but I'm going to go ahead and draw it for you guys on this whiteboard. And so we have a pan. Let's just make a rectangle. And we have 1/4 of a pan of lasagna left. Okay, so let's go ahead and color in that 1/4. And then we know that Tom ate 1/3 of that 1/4, right? So I'm going to go ahead and cut that into thirds, right? I'm cutting just the 1/4 into thirds. And he ate 1/3. So this is the chunk that Tom ate. Now to figure out how much of the whole pan of lasagna he ate, it's helpful for us to see how many parts are in the whole. So you can see that the whole pan would have had 12 parts, so he ended up eating 1/12 of the whole. Another way to look at it is he ate 1/3 of the 1/4. And remember, we would write that multiplication of fractions as 1/3 times 1/4, which would give us 1/12. Now we're going to do something similarly, but this time we're going to multiply mixed numbers, and we're going to use this area model again. But I'm going to go ahead and do it on a whiteboard again because I want to show you how I'm building this so it makes a little bit more sense. So on my whiteboard right now, I'm writing down 7.5 times 2 3/4. And I'm going to suggest that you do this in your math notebook as well. And so what I want is I want to make a rectangle. And don't worry so much about the size of your rectangle. Just make a nice rectangle. Ooh, that looks more like a parallelogram, doesn't it? There. And so I want one dimension of my rectangle to represent 7.5, and the other dimension of my rectangle to represent 2 3/4. So I'm gonna cut it like right here, and I'm going to call this side 7.5. So I'm going to call this side, this part 7, and this part 1/2, because 7.5 is 7.5. And then I'm going to call this width of the rectangle 2 3/4. So I'm going to cut like right here, and I'm going to call this part 2 and this part 3/4. Okay. All right, now what I have is I have this chunk right here, which is a 7 times 2. So I'm going to find the area of each of the sub parts of this rectangle area model. So this part is to be found by just multiplying 7 times 2, and 7 times 2 is 14. This part right here is found by multiplying 1/2 times 2. What's a half times 2? Or what's a half of 2? A half of 2 is just 1. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to multiply 7 times 3/4. I want to know what is 3/4 of 7. And the reason I said 3/4 is because I know this dimension is 7. This dimension is 3/4. So I'm going to multiply 7 times 3/4. And to do this, I'm going to erase that 7, and I'm going to write 7 over 1 because it's the same thing, but then it allows me to multiply a little nicer. So then I get 21/4. And I'm going to rewrite that as 5 1/4. So that's 5 1/4. And then this little chunk down here is going to be 1/2 times 3/4, right? So 1/2 times 3/4. And 1/2 times 3/4 is 3/8. So this value is 3/8. And then what I need to do is I need to add up all of the parts. So I'm going to start with all the whole numbers. 14 plus 1 is 15 plus 5 is 20. And now I'm going to add up my parts. I have a 1/4 and 3/8. So if I have a 1/4 and 3/8, I'm going to think of my 1/4 as 2/8 so that it allows me to easily add my 3/8, and I get 5/8. So my final answer is 20 5/8. I know that seems like a lot of work to multiply mixed numbers. You can also turn them into improper fractions and multiply. And that's basically where we want to get to. And so the improper fraction for 7 1/2 is going to tell us how many halves that is. So there's 14 halves in 7 plus one more is 15 halves. And then I'm going to multiply that by how many 4ths are in 2. So that's 8, right? 8/4. Plus 3 more is 11/4. And then I'm going to multiply. Unfortunately, I can't cancel any factors this direction or this direction. So I have to multiply 15 times 11. 15 times 11. Let's go ahead and do that our standard algorithm because that's good practice. We get 5 1 and 5 1 and 5 6 1. So that's going to give me 165. 165 eighths. If it was 168ths, it would be 20. So it's going to be 20 5/8, which of course is the same as what we got here. All right, hopefully that gives you enough info to get going on those practice problems. Thanks for listening.